This is episode 18 of the Gambling Still Sucks podcast. In this episode, I discuss a recent trip I took to a place I wouldn't otherwise go. Hey there, and welcome to the Gambling Still Sucks podcast. My name is Jamie. I am a compulsive gambler, and I'm also the host of this show. The last day I gambled was July 15th of 2010. First of all, I want to apologize to anyone that has been waiting for a new episode to come out. As I've mentioned before, I like to get these out every Friday. Last week's did not make it out. It was one of those things. I've been really busy with work, and I'll discuss that a little bit in this episode. But I apologize. I wanted to get one out every Friday, and last Friday just didn't happen. So that's an easy segue into what has been happening in my life. And as I've mentioned in the last few episodes, I've been really busy with work. And as most of you know, I work in marketing and advertising. And one of the big things each year is working on a trade show. And so last week was the culmination of all this hard work and seeing it all come together at the trade show. And it was a really good show. Everything went very smoothly. All my stress eventually sort of drifted away as the week went on. But yeah, I wanted to share about this just because the trade show where it took place. And as usually happens with these things, they're typically in like a hot city or a city that draws a crowd. And a lot of times those are here in the United States, either Atlantic City or Las Vegas. And this one was in Las Vegas. And so it's one of those things that it's not a place I would ever travel to personally. And I only go kind of with my wife's blessing, first of all, and with my own comfort. There was a time, even 2-3 years ago, I probably wouldn't have gone. And now I think I'm to a place in my recovery, not that I can go just kind of willy-nilly. I go with eyes wide open. And I think that's why I have a comfort with it, is that I go knowing my full situation, and I feel very comfortable in my recovery just because of the work that I put in week in and week out. And I think that by putting the proper checks and balances in place, it's a trip that I can now comfortably take without having any issues. So this is my second trip. I did my first one last year, and last year, I'll admit, was really stressful. And this year was much less stressful, part because it was the second time. And then the second part of that is because my wife actually was able to join me this year. And while she wasn't out there the first few days, she came out about midway through the trip, which was great. And so having her out there, it just gave me that peace of mind. One, knowing she was there, and more than anything, last year, all my stress was in trying to check in constantly. And I knew I wasn't doing anything wrong or that I shouldn't be doing, but still there was that okay, how often can I check in? And man, okay, I'm at this event. I need to let her know that I'm okay and that everything's all right. There was no easy way to kind of check in with her. And so this year it was so much easier just having her out there and just be like, hey, I'm going to the show, come back. It worked out. We went out to dinner a few times. We had kind of a nice little mini vacation for ourselves at night, which was great. We took in a show, and it was not nearly as stressful as past trips. And so I guess if you find yourself in this situation, and I guess that's why I'm sharing this experience, because I think we'll all find ourselves in a situation where we are near a gambling establishment of some kind in our lives. And so these times, I think it's really where you draw on the things that you do in recovery to help avoid a pitfall. So like I say, I just wanted to kind of share my story and be very transparent about it. So having my wife come with me, and obviously she clearly knows all of my past struggles, and she also knows what I do now in recovery. So it was nice to have her there with me. It's just, like I say, peace of mind. So bringing somebody along with you, kind of an advocate on your side, I would definitely suggest if you find yourself in a similar situation where work or friends pull you in a situation. Now, on that same topic of friends, I will say we had a couple events that were at restaurants within casinos that force you to walk by different places. Actually, my wife and I, we did a good job. We found some back ways in and out of places, which was even better. And it's not that it even bothers me. I think it's a comfort for her. She doesn't really want to be walking around there with me either. So it was nice. We found some back ways in and out, but some of them it's just unavoidable. And I'll say it's interesting now going into it. I think as I walked through, I wasn't really looking at any of the games as much as the people and just that glazed look on everyone's face and kind of that robotic look. And I noticed this last year when I was walking around. Man, in the past, I'd always find the people that were excited or loud or winning. And now my eye and my attention is just drawn to the people that I just really wish I could almost reach out and give them a hug or give them the link to this podcast and say, hey, it doesn't have to be like this anymore. Because you just see that pain and that suffering, and you can tell it from a mile away. I mean, you look at the people and you see their eyes and you see their emotions, and they're just kind of a shell of themselves. And so that was one of those things as I was walking around, focusing on that, I think just helped me keep everything in reality. And I'll say even before I went on my trip, it was the drive to the airport or while we were sitting at the airport, and I kind of just mentally went through, okay, not that I had any intentions to gamble. And as you know, my gambling is poker, and especially on a trip like this, I didn't have more than a couple hours free at any time. And my time was completely tied up. And I would never go sit at a poker table knowing that I had to leave in an hour or two. I would need a very long time to even have a desire to go. But that's beside the point. But getting back to my thought was, you know what? Okay, just a reminder of everything I had to lose. And as much as I say I need a long time, sure, when you're away and potentially no one could find out, those would be times where it could be a potential pitfall where I could fall and do something I shouldn't do. And so before I left, I reminded myself of everything I had to lose. And I mean, I thought about my family, my wife and kids, and how I know now I'm very comfortable in saying that if I go back, they will not be in my life. And I'll be kind of a wreck and out on my own. And my wife should leave me and she should take the kids with her. That should absolutely happen because that's not fair to either of those for me to continue gambling. It would absolutely wreck our lives, and I don't think they should stick around for that show. So knowing that, I guess it was just kind of like another peaceful thing. Like, hey, I've got things going really well. And actually for my work's going really, really well right now. And that's the other reason, obviously, I want to go and continue that on. And so I started really looking at all the things that I would lose for what? To go sit at a poker table for a couple hours? No, that wasn't going to happen. But again, comes back to the full reminder and full awareness of my situation that I think allows me to look at that option, that opportunity, and be like, yeah, you have the opportunity, but that would be so dumb. There's no way you'd want to do that. And so that awareness that 7.5 years has provided me, I think, is the key. So as I said, my wife went out with me. I had full awareness going into it. And the other thing was just that I was fully prepared to tell any of my coworkers, should we get in a situation where they were going to go to the casino to gamble. And I know some of them did it the last night when my wife went to a show, and it worked out really well that I didn't have to bring that up. But I'm comfortable with that now. And I was pretty much ready to tell any of them at any point. And actually, even just now getting home, I think I'm going to tell a couple of them, just say, hey, look, the reason I wouldn't have gone out with you had nothing to do with you or the clients or anything like that. It's just that I don't gamble, and kind of share some of my background with them. And again, this is something I've gotten to the point where I'm comfortable with. I didn't really see it as a necessary thing. If it would have been something where they would have been pushing me or razzing me and say, hey, come on, you got to come with us. You got to come with us. I would have absolutely said something because it's not worth me going. And I didn't want to go. I wouldn't suggest anybody to go and watch. And I know I wouldn't want to go and watch because first of all, it's just no fun. Watching other people lose money is absolutely no fun. And also, I just know that could potentially be a big trigger. And so I just don't put myself in those situations. And so being prepared to tell coworkers was another mental hurdle, I think. But it was a big one to know that, hey, I'm comfortable saying, nope, not going to do it. And like I say, go back 3-4 years ago, I don't know if I would have been comfortable with that. And that's a lot of why I wouldn't have done like this type of trip until I really felt like I was in a good place and a place that I had full awareness of my situation so that I wouldn't make a poor decision. Basically, just kind of put myself in a chance to succeed and not put myself in a place where I could fail. And so all of these things, and I think, like I say, this is where kind of constantly filling up that willpower tank, it kind of pays off, I feel like. Because if I hadn't been going to meetings for the last 7.5 years, and even if I've been going for 5 and then hadn't gone for a few, this type of trip, I would hope my wife would say, no, that's not a good idea. And I'd hope I would say, no, that's not a good idea. And like I say, I don't bring this up to suggest that anyone take a trip to Las Vegas or Atlantic City or anywhere else for leisure. As I said in the opening, it's not a place I would go for leisure. The only reason I was there was because it was for work. And since it was for work, I felt I should go, and I just needed to put up the proper barriers in place to make sure that I would succeed and have those reminders up. But the second part of this is just that I really look at gambling as you're not going to be able to completely escape it for the rest of your life. And that's really the reason I wanted to share this. It wasn't so much about my trip and giving you the validation of, okay, you can take a trip like that or you shouldn't take a trip like that. It's simply that I think at some point in your life, and I knew some point in my life, I was going to be placed in a situation similar to this. And I'll continue to be placed in situations that are similar to this going forward. And so it really comes down to kind of having that full awareness, keeping that willpower tank on full by doing the right things, by going to meetings, by sharing my story here on this podcast, by talking with friends and letting more people know about my situation. And all of these things just make it easier when I am placed in one of those situations. Because like I say, gambling, I mean, it's now here in the state of Ohio, which it didn't used to be. If I really wanted to, I'm self-employed. If I really wanted to go to the casino, I could go pretty much any day and nobody would find out right away. I could probably hide it for a while. Eventually, the fallout from it, the loss of money, would surely catch up. And my wife would not take too long to become wise to it. And she always is good about checking in on me, and I'm good about checking in with her so she doesn't have to ask all the time. But getting back to the point, gambling's all around us. You're going to find yourself in a place where it is uncomfortable. And so this is, I guess, my suggestion is just make sure that you continue to invest in yourself, continue to go to meetings, to read other posts, to share your story, because those are the things that have helped me the most. And I'm sure they're the things that will help you the most if and when you're placed in that situation. And probably when, not if. Because like I say, you're going to be there with a situation with friends or work or family that takes you in or at least near some kind of gambling establishment. And it could even just be the fantasy football in the office. All those types of things are going to happen. So get yourself ready for those situations so that when they come up, it's not this big to do. And I think that's the thing I'm seeing is last year it was a little bit bigger to do than it was this year. And sort of having gone through it once, I knew what to expect personally. And I mean, the first time that we went to our dinner the first night was in a casino. I went over to make sure that everything was set up. And I mean, I didn't walk, I didn't linger. I went straight there and found the fastest way to get there. But the first little bit, I mean, my heart was kind of pumping just because it felt like, man, this isn't something I really want to be in. And I think having that awareness and that knowledge was good. And realizing that those emotions were, it's a positive thing for me. It was my body saying, look, get in and get out. Don't linger. And I didn't. And so that's, I guess, the point of this whole episode is not so much about my story or my decision to go, because I'm sure people will say, oh, that's a terrible decision. And I know people at my GA meeting will likely tell me that it's a terrible decision. Everybody has to make their own decisions. We have situations in life that are slightly out of our control. I try to control everything I possibly can. And even situations like this, which are out of my control, I made sure to put up barriers. Like I say, having my wife come out, that was the best money we could spend. At one point, she was like, fares are a little expensive on the flight. Do you really think? And I said, yes, I think you should come, because I knew how much more relaxing the trip was going to be for me, having her there with me. And so doing those little extra things, being ready to tell the people you're with about your issue if you don't already tell them ahead of time, which is even better. And then just, like I said, keep that willpower tank full so that when you come across a situation where you do find yourself in kind of a place where you could go down the two different paths, it'll help you to continue to follow the good path and not stray. So that's my story. Like I say, I'm sorry I didn't have an episode up last week. Work is really good. Family's really good. Hopefully this is helping you. I keep getting your emails and your messages, and I love that. If this is helping you, please send me a message and continue to follow up. Let me know how you're doing. If you've already sent one, say, hey, you know what? I sent one a couple weeks ago and I slipped up, or I ran into this problem, or things are still great, because all those things really help me stay motivated and focused. And it's just rewarding to hear that it helps. But also just, I appreciate having one more person that it helps me too, to know that, hey, there's somebody else that's in this struggle, that's fighting to get their life back just like I am. It's less feeling like being alone. Oh, and one other story I forgot, a couple stories. When I was out there, I actually had a conversation with our cab driver on the way to dinner the one time. Actually, I said, I was alone. This was when I was going to set up. And he was talking about, I said, is it busy? Blah, blah, blah. We were having small talk. And I said to him, I'm like, you know what? Now, if people would just learn they could come out here and go home with all the money they came with, and they didn't have to spend it, everybody would be good. And he started to laugh a little bit. And he's like, man, it's bad. It's sad. And so we talked a little bit more. And eventually he started sharing about his nephew that had a huge gambling problem and ended up having to leave the state because he was down, had no money, had baby on the way. I think they had the baby, and he still continued to gamble. And like he said, he goes, I could tell like he didn't have a choice anymore. And so I kind of shared, I said, yeah, I mean, I used to struggle with that too. And actually now it's been 7.5 years since I've gambled. And he was like, wow, that's really good. Congratulations. And that was just one of those things, that small little thing, being able to open up and share with him was kind of empowering for me. And also, I mean, he told me another story about a guy that came to Vegas every Friday night, I think it was, and went home Saturday afternoon, and his wife never knew. His wife thought he was still at work, and she thought that he stayed and worked through Saturday. And I think he said he fast forward, and the guy had gone through millions of dollars and was now living homeless in Las Vegas. And these stories are tragic, and they're sad, and as he and I both said, unfortunately, like, nobody talks about these stories. And hopefully this will bring some more light. But the more that you share, and again, it was me being able to open up with him, a random stranger. That was another one of those willpower things. Right as I'm getting ready to go in to our dinner, that it was just kind of, it made me feel good. It reminded me that I'm doing the right thing. And it was cool to have a random stranger kind of congratulate me on continuing to do the right thing. And so look for those opportunities. Share your story with other people. Kind of, you don't have to come right out and say it. I didn't right away. But we kind of started talking about the topic, and all of a sudden, like I say, we talked about a couple different people that he knew that had been dramatically impacted by gambling. And when I got out of the cab, he just said, hey, you know what? You have a great night. And I said, you too, sir. And it was just really nice. And so that was one of those situations that I really enjoyed that. I hope that story resonates with you, because it is. It's something that when you tell people, when you share, they're really happy for your success. And that was kind of a different way. I mean, you're out there and you think most cab drivers are happy that somebody won because they had money to tip. And I gave them a nice tip because I didn't have to win. I've already won by not gambling. So that was just another story I wanted to share from my trip. But anyways, I hope this episode helps. Like I say, let me know what you think. Again, I'm not advocating anybody go into a situation or go into a casino just to hang out. By no means is that the situation. This is just one of those things when you're forced or you find yourself in a position, continue to fill up that willpower tank ahead of time so that you're able to make the right decision and stay on the right track. Thanks for listening, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Hoping to get some interviews recorded, so a few of these next episodes will hopefully be interviews or discussions with other compulsive gamblers or people in the industry. So look forward to that, and I will see you in the next episode. Now, before you go, I'd like to go over a few very important things. First of all, I think it's important to remember that problem gambling is a treatable disorder. There's no scientific evidence or study that suggests that this is just a terminal condition and that we're going to be forced to deal with the negative side effects and results of our actions for the rest of our lives. And so while I know that in the moment it feels like this is something that you're going to be struggling with for the rest of your life, science just doesn't back that up. Recovery is real, but we just need to seek out treatment. And so that brings me to point number 2, which is that help is available. Many of the states here in the United States actually offer free counseling and therapy for not only gamblers, but family members as well. And so you just need to know that these programs are available. And the best way to start finding out more information is to call the hotline number. And that's 1-800-522-4700. Again, that's 1-800-522-4700. And this is the number run by the National Council on Problem Gambling. And so it covers all 50 states, and they're going to have information and be able to start to guide you on the path to seek out help in the area where you live. And these hotlines aren't just available here in the United States. They're available around the world. So just simply open up a web browser, type in gambling help, gambling hotline, and you'll be able to find the information for your local area. In addition to the hotlines, there are numerous places where you can find gambling support and information online. If you go to gamblingstillsucks.com/help, I'll list some of these things, and I'll continue to add to this as I find new resources, whether they're chat groups or online forums or just great information. So again, that was gamblingstillsucks.com/help. As a disclaimer, this podcast does not provide legal or medical advice. Look, I'm not a doctor, a therapist, or an attorney. I'm just a guy who had a gambling problem. So while we'll discuss a lot of topics and I'll provide a lot of insight into what's worked for me, please seek out the help of a professional. Go visit a lawyer, a doctor, or a therapist to help you deal with your gambling problem. The information that we discuss is for informational purposes and should not be taken as professional legal or medical advice. And reliance on the information appearing on the podcast is solely at your own risk. The music for this podcast is Something Elated by Broke for Free and licensed under the Creative Commons.